Hey, alright. Two fairly substantial things have happened to me since I finished my review on Evil Dead Rise. Two things, one of which was finally seeing Alien Romulus, and spoiler alert, it was indeed at least a 6 out of 10, so I was happy to have seen that. And then the other thing, well, I saw another movie. But first, speaking of spoilers, I do not yet know if I will spoil this movie, so can I get a spoilers by default card, please? Thank you. As you might have guessed, I am not too knowledgeable on Marvel lore, so superhero movies have never really been my thing. I'm not really a fan, that's all. I never saw Avengers Endgame. I do not understand the Thanos memes, aside from the pornographic ones. I have tried to watch the new Spider-Man movies, but I just could not stand the silliness. I have checked out the odd Doctor Strange, Suicidal Squad, Teenage Mutant Mutants movie, just to check out the CGI and whatnot, but I did not really enjoy them all that much. You see, I never watched these movies for the stories or the characters. Let's not kid ourselves here. They only served to cure my severe case of curiosity, for I wanted to see what $200 million looks like when transferred from USD to CGI. Nevertheless, I did see Logan, and you know what? I really like that movie. I am not saying all of this to sound cool. Have I seen Avengers? Yesn't? Look at me, a Marvel backdoor virgin. What innocence. No, I just thought it would be interesting to board this Mountain Dew hype train and review the movie as someone who is seeing this without much knowledge of the lore or a great interest in Marvel movies in general. Okay, so I saw Deadpool and Wolverine for more than one of 3 reasons. 1, I like violent R-rated movies that make sure that they deserve their MPAA rating. 2, I like the way in which Deadpool plays with the English language. And then 3, well, I saw Deadpool 1 and 2, and as you know, I have seen Logan as well, so how could I not watch this sybaritic compilation of callbacks, Marvel and cultural references, and of course, sexual tension? Let me go ahead and start off with my criticisms of the movie. Yes, I cannot help myself. What can I say? My blackened, squalid heart needs pruning. So I really enjoy the writing of these Deadpool movies, and more so than any other Marvel IP, I'd say, but I do take issue with some of the newfound habits of Deadpool writers. Oh, let me introduce them first. Those writers are a lot of people. They and the cast are numerous, so let's just cite Ryan Reynolds and Sean Levy, the lead actor and the director of the movie. Throughout D&W, as I will only call it this one time, characters say offbeat or even outlandish things that seemed to me to serve only to warrant an oddly specific response from Deadpool himself.
Mr. Wilson, you appear to have soiled yourself while unconscious.
I wasn't unconscious. Who are you?
So too does Deadpool only really say things to function as bait, so other characters may respond with their witty quip or sarcasm. At best, this is just mildly distracting, I'd say, but at worst, it sounds and feels like someone is trying to put a square peg in a circular hole. That is, it feels like the bit was not inserted into the movie properly. In more ways than one, I feel like they regard comedy higher than authenticity and also logical cohesion.
What the fuck are those? Oh, back in civilian life I wear a toupee, but nobody knows. Everybody knows.
So I can see what they did there. In case you didn't know, it's a common joke that men with toupees think that they are pulling them off well when in reality everyone can see what it is, but still the conversation did not redound to its harmony. There had to be a better way for him to welcome that punchline, for example. Additionally, Deadpool and other characters tended to do things that felt out of character for them or him just so that they can have their own means to a very precise end. A good example of this is Chris Evans as the Human Torch from Fantastic Four, which I saw as a kid, not to brag or anything. I, for one, thought that it was out of character for Wade to rat the torch out for no reason in particular, especially since they hadn't feuded or anything. It was my understanding that we needed the torch to die or just go away already, for that was the end, but still, it did not feel right, even if it functioned as a reference point for comedic moments later on in the movie. Secondly, and this is just a minor gripe, but also a bit of a question, what is with the integrity of Deadpool and Wolverine's suits? Do they also self-heal? I wonder because they were penetrated many times and they had holes and stab stains, but their suits held up. I did notice some continuity errors throughout the movie similar to this kind, but I do not really fault films on that type of thing unless there are too many. Subjective, I know, but that kind of thing happens. There was also a lot of homoerotic camp humor here, but I never sensed that they had any intention of delivering on any of it, actually actualizing those sexual suggestions, and sure enough, they didn't. Even though this would have been the perfect movie for them to do this, since you both have a different version of Wolverine from the one that we had before, and a probably sexually fluid, maybe, single Deadpool. I don't know. I think that the fact that they typically hate each other would have made for better intercourse, or so I've heard. Thruple, anyone? It would not do anything for me, but I can see there being Deadpool fans out there. Love. I loved that from sequel to sequel, Deadpool does not entirely abandon the main themes from its subsequent films. Here they are so far family and love, I believe. It very much corresponds with reality and how with the attainment of every new goal is born a new one and a new desire to fulfill. So there is continuity in that regard. With each passing film, Wade's deeply buried, purposefully obscured sentimentality becomes more pronounced. It is true, one tends to either sensitize with age or just lean harder into their own habits, as is usually the case with these big movies. The editing was great for the most part. Fight scenes were easy to follow, mostly. The transitions from location to location as we transport alongside our mains was smooth. I appreciated the steady flow of events and linguistic beats throughout the movie. I also really loved the violence, even though it was very obviously animated for the most part. But that seems to be the standard for R-rated movies with budgets over $100 million these days. If ever there was an incredibly violent R-rated movie, safe for children, then this would be it, or the closest to it. One more thing, and that is that I loved that in this movie we actually get to see the sets both close up and then at large at some distance. There were a bunch of establishing shots of the spaces our characters occupied. Yes, it was refreshing to see a movie that did not zoom in on everything like some big budget blockbusters I've seen lately. Deadpool and Wolverine was ultimately a fun watch for me. I am glad to have seen it. The movie as a whole, in retrospect, however, was somewhat abounding with ideas that were not all sensibly inserted into the movie's superstructure. I can see what the team behind the movie was trying to do, and they did it with a lot of care, or at the very least self-aware consideration, but it was a bit gratuitous. I felt the same was true about the last Deadpool movie too. Of course, having people semi-passionate about the project at the very least helps. So does throwing hundreds of millions of dollars at it. Truly, it was noble of them to write a movie so overmastering in its premise and reach, and with such a large cast too. In this movie's case, they aimed immoderately high as opposed to the middle, and I would say that they mostly succeeded at that, even in the face of, say, instances wherein the series of events they constructed lead to a certain outcome were excessive, or let me use a word that I never get to use actually, Baroque. So yeah, Deadpool and Wolverine gets a 5.5 out of 10 for me. I swear, not everything is a 5.5 out of 10 for me. This is just a coincidence. Look, the purpose of this movie, in my eyes, is to entertain, first and foremost, not to personally speak to people. I would not say that, like with a bunch of other superhero movies, it was afraid to take itself more seriously. Rather, I wonder if that was ever a consideration. There were too many elements of the movie that felt like something that you might find in a bad parody, completely extraneous and not always forthcoming. Needless to say, I am not a big fan of Hollywood's tendency to insert cheap, self-referential and Baroque comedic devices or scenes for a joke or two at the expense of the movie's tone and more serious messages, I think there's only one messages being underpinned. Deadpool and Wolverine is not perfect, but I do not think that anyone was expecting it to be.